Did you know that 79% of employees who quit their job cite lack of appreciation as their reason for leaving? That's a leadership problem, and if you're leading staff, that makes it your problem. So, do you want some tips to help you combat this issue and get the jump on those members of your team who might be feeling unappreciated right now? Well, today that's what it's all about. Some key steps to make you a more effective leader, and how you can take some quite significant strides in just 7 days. This video is part 1 of your leadership transformation. Let's face it, leadership is not easy. We've all seen teams struggle with poor communication, demotive members, or just a general lack of direction. Maybe you have experienced these type of challenges yourselves. Maybe you struggle with delegating, giving constructive feedback, or simply connecting with your team in a meaningful way. These are common hurdles, but they are surmountable. So let's start with day 1 of how to be an effective leader and stop anyone in your team who might be feeling unappreciated from moving on quite so quickly. The first one for your day 1 of leadership transformation is mastering active listening. This is about truly hearing what your team members are saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak. To start putting this into practice, begin with setting the stage for focused listening. This is about being in a really distractive-free zone, putting away your phone, muting a computer if you're using it, making sure that the individual that you're speaking with actually feels like you are paying attention to them and not just doing other things. Mentally shift your attention to the speaker. Then you have to show them that you're actually listening. So this is about being really mindful of how you're presenting yourself. Don't be fiddling with things or looking away from them all the time, as it could indicate that you're not interested. Maintain eye contact and demonstrate physical engagement by leaning forward and holding an open body posture. Engage with what they are actually saying by asking clarifying questions. And it's really helpful to paraphrase what they've said to you in your own words to really make sure that you understand what they've said, but also it highlights that you're actually listening. Remember non-verbal cues such as nodding to show that you agree or that you understand, and paying attention to those non-verbal cues you might be sending off unintentionally. Respond thoughtfully and avoid interrupting or giving immediate advice. Try to understand their perspective, even if you don't necessarily agree with it, and avoid trying to recount your own personal experience or story that may remotely tie into what they're saying. Keep it focused. Be patient and don't rush the speaker. Validate what they have contributed or said to you by thanking them for what they've done. This really shows that not only have you listened to them, but you appreciate them and what they've contributed. It can validate the courage it can take, particularly if it is a difficult conversation. Active listening is a skill that requires practice. This is not a day 1 thing that you do and then you never do again. You're actually going to have to do this consistently. It really helps you build trust. You get amazing insight on what is actually going on in your team and what people are thinking about things, which obviously improves decision making because you can then make decisions based on real information and insights, and it improves morale. Day 2's focus is about cultivating empathy. This is about understanding the feelings of others, taking a walk in their shoes. Incorporating empathy into your leadership is not just, oh, this is nice to have. This is actually essential if you really want to understand your team and build a really great team environment. So some tips to help you cultivate empathy start with what you learned in day 1 around active listening. Extend on this through observation and incorporating open-ended questions that really help open people up so that you can understand their perspective. For example, instead of asking, "Did you finish that report?" try, "How are you feeling about your progress on the report so far?" Cultivate understanding and perspective by that old put yourself in their shoes. Actively try and imagine what it is like for the person that you're speaking to. Consider their challenges, concerns, or motivations. Seek diverse perspectives by encouraging feedback and input from everyone in your team. It really helps broaden your understanding and avoids bias. It can be really easy just to ask somebody who you know is quite similar thinking to what you are, and you can quickly ask them a question and kind of get a reinforcement of what it is that you're thinking. But the real challenge is to ask questions of people whose perspective you know is quite different to yours, to really challenge your own thinking. Be aware of your own biases too. Recognise that we all have them, and really work hard to try and minimise them. To cultivate empathy, you also need to consider your reaction to how other people think and speak. So if someone is bringing you a perspective that you don't agree with, don't be really blatant and cutthroat in how you respond to it. Consider it with empathy. Think about it from their perspective first, before you have a knee-jerk reaction. This can really help unveil any of those hidden biases you already have. Be willing to provide resources and assistance to others. This could include being willing to offer a bit of flexibility, some training, or connecting them with other support options. Don't just think about the people that need your support right now either, because it's quite easy to be empathetic in situations of crisis. It's actually more challenging to do it on a really consistent basis, where you are acting with empathy truly all the time. It also helps if you're leading by example. Set the tone as a leader. This can really help with open communication. If you've got an environment where people are comfortable and prepared to speak openly, you're really cultivating an environment with empathy. Because if people were concerned that what they were going to say or how their perspective was going to land with others, they wouldn't be open communicators. So cultivate a space that people can communicate openly. Day 3 brings active listening and empathy together in clear communication. Start off with considering your audience. When you're thinking about communication, immediately think about, who am I speaking to? Who's receiving this? A framework that helps me with this is the know, do, feel framework. The know, what does the audience already know? What do the people that I'm speaking to already know about this situation? What do they need to know? The do is, what do they need to do? What do I need to do? What actions are needed here? Feel is, what do you want them to feel? How do you want the message to land with them? Then you can tailor your message accordingly and adjust the language and any complexity based on who the audience are that are receiving the message. Use clear examples and avoid using jargon if your audience is unfamiliar with it. Consider their perspective using their empathy that you've been working on since day 2, and think about how your message will be received and interpreted by your audience. Try and anticipate any potential questions that they might have and incorporate them into your message so they don't have questions. If you're communicating verbally, really consider that non-verbal communication. How are you presenting? Do you look anxious and fidgety, or are you calm and clear? Avoid crossing your arms, fidgeting, or looking away, as these can signal defensiveness or disinterest. Align non-verbal cues with your message. For example, if you're trying to express enthusiasm, don't do it in a monotone voice. Actually put some excitement into your voice so that people feel like they want to be part of it, or whatever. Prioritize clarity by keeping it concise. Get to the point quickly and avoid unnecessary detail that could distract people from what it is that you actually want them to hear. It also respects everybody's time. Nobody likes a waffler. Structure your message for written communication with clear headings, bullet points, and really concise messaging that highlights if there's actions in there that you need them to take. Maybe bold them or bullet point them so people can clearly see what it is you expect. Try and organise it logically so that it's easy for people to follow. There's nothing worse than getting an email which is an essay and having to read through it and try and guess what it is the person's actually asking you. What's the point of it? I hate those messages. Focus on the most important points and continue to incorporate that active listening that you learn about on day 1. Communication is a two-way street after all. It's not all about you. Day 4 is about providing constructive feedback. This is about offering specific and actionable feedback that means something to somebody else in a way that actually has empathy, particularly if it's a difficult conversation. The idea around leadership and feedback is that you are open and honest, and you help develop your team members by being honest with them about things that could be opportunities for them, or could just be downright "don't do this again" situations. This is challenging for a lot of leaders. It is hard to get across constructive feedback in a way that isn't going to make somebody curl up into a ball and cry themselves to sleep, or ignore it because they didn't actually realize you were telling them something that was a "don't do this," but thought that they heard a whole lot of praise. Because unfortunately, it's a lot easier to give that soft kind of feedback where you want to tell somebody that they did something that you weren't that happy with, but you start with all the good things that they do to soften the blow, and really all you're doing is wasting their time and not being clear. Timely feedback on performance is really important. It allows your team members to address things in the moment rather than saving up 6 things that you need to tell them they did wrong that were weeks ago and they've actually forgotten. The longer you leave it, the more it will escalate, or the more difficult it will be to address it because they can't even remember it. There also needs to be an aspect of you can't give feedback on every single little thing. Think about the big picture. What is it that is really important? Do you need to be telling them off every time they do something wrong? We are human. All of us make mistakes every day. No one wants a leader that's in the micro and pulling them up on everything. Think about what is the most important. I will often think about, have I seen this before from this person? And if the answer is no, I'll probably let it go, unless it's really significant, obviously. If it's something where I think, I've seen this again, this is a repeated pattern of behaviour that I'm not happy with, then yes, that's important for me to get on top of. You don't want to be micromanaging team or behaviours. You want to keep them engaged and on the right track and motivated. Feedback done with transparency also lines up with accountability and making sure that everyone is accountable for their actions and doing the right things. This also sends a strong message to your team too, as nobody wants to feel like someone else is getting special treatment because you're ignoring behaviour from them and not from another person. So consistency is key here too. Now, day 5 is all about recognising and appreciating. This all builds together and also contributes to that 79% of employees who leave blame the idea that they're not appreciated. So make sure you check out the video linked on your screen for part 2, where we go into day 5. Thanks very much for watching.